Hello, and welcome back to the studio. I'm Dr. Wiggo, and today I'm going to finally review my new iPad Pro with the M4 processor that I bought on day one, and maybe shouldn't have. Stay tuned. So how this is going to work is the next chapter I'm going to run through the hardware, and so if you watched my unboxing and or the Apple event, you'll know all that, so you can just skip on past that to the next chapter where I'll talk about the new stuff in iOS 18. And if you watched Apple's WWDC event, well, then you can skip on past that chapter too, because the chapter after that will be where I'll talk about my review and what I think of this and whether I think it needed all that hardware. No. So the hardware. If you don't know by now that this is the thinnest device Apple's ever made, then you haven't been watching any commercials on television or any videos on YouTube or pretty much anything, because that's all they talk about. 5.1 millimeters thin, the thinnest Apple product ever. Oh my God. Only 1.28 pounds, but of course the 11-inch is actually under a pound, so that's actually thin, but it's not as thin as this, it's just lighter. Anyway, the main thing is the tandem OLED display, which gets you up to 1,000 nits in SDR and HDR, and 1,600 nits of peak HDR brightness, which leads to better specular highlights, deeper true blacks, more details in shadow and low light, more responsive to content and motion, the P3 wide color gamut, a wide viewing angle, and there's a nano texture glass option, although that costs a pretty penny because you have to go up to the 1 terabyte to even be able to order it. Of course, the main thing about this announcement was the new M4 processor, which they have never introduced in an iPad before. They always came in the Macs, and then it's the second generation of the 3-nanometer technology. There's a new display engine for driving the tandem OLED screen. There's up to 4 performance cores. Now, I got the lower spec model, the 256 gigs of storage, so I only have the 3 performance cores. Not that that's going to be a big headache. And of course, they all have 6 efficiency cores. Now, it's 50% faster than the M2. It's got a 10-core GPU, which will do mesh shading and ray tracing, all that stuff that they came with the M3. 4 times faster rendering than the M2. And a 16-core neural engine for 38 trillion operations per second, which is over 60 times faster. That'll become important later. Then they have the graphite sheets and copper under the Apple logo back here, running through here, which gives it more structural stability. They have moved the front camera up to here instead of being over on the side. And then, of course, it comes with 256 gigabytes of storage, which is what I have, or 512, or 1 terabyte, or 2 terabytes. If you get the 1 or 2 terabytes, you pick up the extra performance core, and you get the option of the nano texture glass. But now you're well over $2,000, so you might as well get a Mac. Seriously. One of the things about this announcement is that it did not come with a new version of iPadOS. They said, stay tuned later for WWDC, where we will announce iPadOS 18, which will then be coming out in the fall. And there's some cool things in there. There's a floating tab bar, which is customizable, and it will convert over to a sidebar. For those of us who spend our times in landscape, the sidebar is actually probably preferred. They've redesigned a bunch of apps to take advantage of this new floating tab bar, pages, keynotes, numbers. But the cool thing they announced was a new calculator. That's not the cool thing. Math notes, where you can use the Apple Pencil to actually write equations, enter expressions with a pencil. If you put in an equal sign, it'll solve for it. You can draw a line under a stack of figures and it will add them. It's very smart. Well, it's using that new neural engine, which we talked about in the hardware. You can set up equations with variables, and you can change the value of a variable, and it will change all the solutions and everything, all the math on the page. You can even do graphing, where you can have a little graph of your equation, and then you can move the variables around. If you have the pencil, you can move the values of the variables up and down and watch what happens to the graph. And all of this also works in the Notes app. So you can be taking notes and you can just start making calculations and it'll be solving them for you. So it's kind of cool. Another thing they announced was Smart Scripts, again, primarily for the Notes app, where it will clean up your handwriting in real time. So as you're writing, it's moving along behind you, tidying up what you've written, getting it all in a line and doing all that kind of stuff. And you can paste text off of the clipboard and it will appear in your handwriting. So that's kind of cool. And you can spell check. You tap on a word in your handwriting and it will spell check it for you. So it's pretty cool. And then on the last slide at the end of the thing, they talked about the Photo Apps redesign, which is primarily for that floating bar. Home screen and control center customization, which they didn't really talk about at all because it's pretty much the same thing that came with the iOS, which they had previously updated. But it's cool. You can move your icons around. You can leave blank spaces. You can put widgets and then screen sharing and SharePlay so that you can help see someone else's screen, like their iPad, and help them and even show them and draw on it, show them where to put stuff. Or you can even take over if they give you permission and do the stuff for them. Great for those of you doing family tech support. So that was the announcement of the software. What does that all mean? Well, I can tell you, I bought this to replace a 6-year-old iPad, which, again, I talk about in there. I can't tell any difference because I don't do anything that requires any kind of power. The M4 processor in here is great for like Final Cut Pro, where you can edit videos and export them, or Logic Pro if you're a musician, you want to have hundreds and hundreds of parts and things in your song. Fantastic. I don't use those things. Well, the M4 probably also would be helpful for speeding up things like the math notes and the Smart Script that they announced. But we won't know that until the fall. I don't run beta software. I want my iPad to always work, so I don't put beta software on these things, not even to make a video for you guys. Did I need an M4? No, absolutely not. Nothing I do requires an M4. And most of the things that would benefit from the M4 are things that I won't be doing on the iPad, like Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro. And the math notes and the Smart Script, that requires the pencil. A lot of the cool features require the pencil. Well, guess what? It means I'm probably going to buy a pencil. I'm not going to do it until iPadOS 18 comes out, released for real, not a beta, because I want to play with all that stuff. So I'm probably going to buy a pencil. I might even buy the keyboard. What use is an M4 to me? Apple Intelligence. That M4 processor with that giant neural engine is going to be fantastic for the Apple Intelligence features that are coming next year. Next year? Yeah, they've already announced that a lot of this stuff isn't going to be until 2025. What does this all mean? I can tell you what it means. If you're fine with your iPad right now, don't buy another one. Wait. Because by the time all this cool stuff comes out, iPadOS 18 in the fall, and then Apple Intelligence later in the year or beginning of next year, then you'll know if you need it. Because if your iPad's all sluggish when you're doing this stuff, well, then you need a new one. Or if you want all the features of the iPad Pencil Pro, maybe you could go ahead and get one now. If you're the kind of person that would use the pencil and, artists and those kind of, or for taking notes if you're a student. So I would say wait on this one. All the M1 and M2 iPads also have the neural engine in their chips. So you may get an iPad Air or even a used M2 iPad Pro, and you'll get all the advantages without all the expense. Because this thing, as sitting here, it was like $1,700. I shouldn't have bought this. This is overkill for me. But I wanted to be future-proof. My last iPad I used for 6 years. Well, I think I might be able to use this one for almost as long. Well, depending on how Apple Intelligence works out. I may have to upgrade it in order to get all the AI stuff that I want. Although, like I said, I think this one will be fine for the next year or two, even with Apple Intelligence and all that powerful stuff. But down the road, my advice, wait. Unless you need a new iPad right now. And if you need a new iPad right now, think real hard if you need the power of the M4. Do you do Final Cut Pro? Do you do Logic Pro? Do you do all the things that require all that kind of power? Or are you like me and mainly you just use this for surfing the web and watching YouTube videos and that kind of stuff? Because if you are, I should have gotten an iPad Air. Seriously. That would have been fine for me. It would have had a good enough processor. It would be able to do all the Apple Intelligence stuff. So the new iPad Air that came out along with this would have been fine for me. I'm going to be okay. Well, A, I can afford it, and B, it will use up some of that power, especially when that Apple Intelligence stuff rolls out. I am going to buy the Apple Pencil when Math Notes and SmartScript become available, because that just looks too much fun. I mean, I'll have fun doing that. Oh, I left something out. In my unboxing, I talked about how I use this in the folio cover, and the way I fold it to put it in my lap, it puts the camera at the bottom. So I will tell you that every time I unlock my iPad, when it's in my lap, the camera is usually obscured by like my pants or my leg or something. So I'm constantly having to lift it up and kind of tilt it like this so it can see, the camera down here can see me. That's the only drawback. Well, the price is the main drawback. Once I got it, the only drawback really is having that camera at the bottom. I may end up getting the keyboard too, again later on, because then when you have it in the keyboard, the camera will be around on the right side, on the top side. And I realized I do a lot of typing on this. I solve crossword puzzles, I do a lot of web searches, and typing on the little keyboard, although I learned a trick from a YouTube video, of course. If you use two fingers and pinch, you can make the keyboard smaller. So you can type down here so you don't have to have the big spread across. Not that that's a problem for me, because that's really more the way I type, but it covers up so much of the screen, which is another reason I'm leaning towards maybe getting that keyboard, even though it's $350. $350 for a little keyboard. That's my review of the iPad Pro M4, which is fantastic. It's very light and easy to deal with. I'm not worried about it bending or breaking because of that reinforcement in here. It's just, it's a good little iPad. But I don't need this much power yet. I'm hoping to need this much power in the future. I'm really looking forward to Apple Intelligence. Tell you how much I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to do a whole video about it, not next week. Next week is the purple mattress and purple pillow reviews that I promised like 3 months ago. And then the week after that, I'll get to Apple Intelligence. I'm going to do some more research. I'm going to try to make a good video, with lots of background. My first experience with artificial intelligence was in 1974. I was at Bell Labs on a tour with my college class, and they were working on voice recognition. Fascinating. I'll tell that story in my Apple Intelligence video coming up in a couple of weeks. If you don't need an iPad right away, wait. Wait to see how the software works out. Wait to see how Apple Intelligence works out. If you need one, think about an M2 version or an iPad Air or something else that's not so expensive. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for stopping by. See you next time. Bye-bye. I'm going to go start doing research on Apple Intelligence right now so I can do a cool video in a couple of weeks. Thanks for staying to the end. Bye-bye.